The moment the elevator door slid open on a gray morning in New York City, I knew the day would tilt the axis of my life. Because trust is a currency I never waste, and betrayal is a tax I never pay twice. And I am Helena Montez, 35 years old, a senior bank executive who keeps a quiet crown tucked behind a calm smile. A woman who can read a balance sheet like a map and a heart like a quiet weapon. And I have a hidden ambition that does not shimmer on the surface, but glows in the dim glow of late nights and the tremor of a cold coffee in a lonely desk drawer. A plan to bend the market to my will without shouting, to shape the future with careful hands, to carve a private avenue of power that no one sees until it is too late to pull back. And this morning, I am stepping into the same glass hallway where I once believed I would be seen only as a dutiful employee. Not the architect of a quiet empire, because the personal event that frames this episode is a betrayal I did not expect. I remember the first spark of the romance as a soft hum in a crowded lobby, the way his voice brushed my shoulder with a certainty I mistook for faith. And I remember the days when I thought I could tell him every move I planned, every risky calculation I would make to reach the unseen peak I chased in the city that never paused, because ambition has a way of disguising itself as something gentle, something comforting, something that promises a shared future. And I let myself believe in that promise, because the work I did to get here demanded a partner who could stand beside me when the numbers grew loud and the hours grew long. But the truth came on a night when the skyline turned to glass fire and a message slid into my phone with the same cold precision as a quarterly report. A message that did not shout, but whispered with a smile of familiar warmth from the person I trusted the most. And in that whisper, I found the first cut of betrayal, not in the line I traced over a spreadsheet. From that crack, I built a new agenda, because a life of honest work had brought me an honest mirror, and in that mirror, I saw a woman who could not afford to be reckless, who could not allow personal pain to derail the objective, who could not let the heartbreak of a personal failure fracture the professional steel I wore as armor. And in that moment, I chose not to chase revenge in a loud room filled with loud voices, but to trap the hurt inside a plan that would outlive the pain and prove that cold justice can be sharper than any blade. And this is where the story I tell begins to breathe with a purpose all its own, with a project I named carefully, with a mission I kept quiet, and with a man who thought he had won, but who would soon learn that he was merely a pawn in a game I would master. The choice I made was not to quit or to scream, but to recruit the very thing that had betrayed me and turn it into a tool, which sounds almost magical, but is simply the art of seeing clearly when others see only emotion. I invited him to join a new venture within the bank, a discreet unit designed to manage risk in a way that would test loyalties without breaking trust altogether. And I let him stand at the door of opportunity while I stood a little behind him. Not unseen in the way a storm is unseen until the lightning strikes, but enough to measure every move he made, every lie he told himself as he watched me pretend to be a patient mentor. And the air in the office grew thicker with the scent of winter and the bite of currency. And I watched his eyes grow hungry for the kind of power he once believed he deserved. And I let him take the first steps toward a trust he would never have earned from me again. The first time he reached for a confidential file without permission, I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice. I simply turned the logs and the emails over to the proper channels and let the system do what it was built to do. And the look on his face when he realized the traceability of his every action had turned into a chain that would drag him down was a silent reward, a taste of the justice I would deliver without the theater of public shaming. Because the best revenge does not demand a spotlight. It simply requires a door to close behind someone, and I closed more doors than I opened, all while keeping the rumors muted and the real power behind a smile and a calm explanation to the few who would listen. As the weeks passed, I watched him become the very thing he thought he controlled, a cog in a machine I alone powered. And I did not gloat it in the quiet, but I did allow a small victory to bloom in the corner of my mouth whenever a risk assessment confirmed his mistake, whenever a client issue he could not handle surfaced, whenever a deadline he could not meet gnawed at his confidence. And I understood that the most effective revenge is not a loud confession, but an orchestrated sequence of small, undeniable losses that erode a person's sense of self until they cannot pretend to be the hero of their own story any longer. And in those moments, I remembered why I hid my wind under the surface, why I trained my gaze on the future and not on the past, why I built a shadow life of disciplined routines and guarded confidences. Because ambition does not whisper to the heart when it speaks to the mind. It roars through the corridors of a bank and through the corridors of a life, and the roar was louder than any heartbreak. Meanwhile, I kept my personal life private, letting the public see only the steady, unshakable rhythm of a woman who could balance a ledger and a life with equal ease. A woman who never conflated affection with advantage, who never used a man as a means to climb higher, even though the truth I harbored was more complex than that simple line. Because sometimes the most effective way to secure your future is to let your enemies believe you have none left to give. To let them think you have discarded your heart as you discard a bad debt, and to move forward with a tempered steel in your chest that refuses to crack. And it is this tremor in the heart that makes the mind sharper, the calculations cleaner, the choices more precise, and it is with that precision that I finally, coldly, and with hidden satisfaction, watched him stumble when his own reputation began to fray, watched his colleagues step back, watched the whispers travel through the glass walls like a winter wind, and I did not lull. One night, in the quiet after a long review cycle, I sat alone in my office with the city map of lights blinking below and a cup of tea cooling in my hands, and I asked myself the hardest question I have ever asked. What is the cost of justice if you must pay it in your own sleep? What is the price of keeping your hands clean when your heart demands a louder answer? And I answered myself when the figures aligned and a new project reached the threshold of reality. A project that would not only shield the bank from a coming storm, but also propel me toward a future only a handful of people ever glimpse. A future where I would be in control of more than a branch or a portfolio. A future where I could decide who gets to rise and who gets left behind. And yes, I would carry the memory of how I was betrayed by the people who swore I mattered. But I would also carry the knowledge that I could still choose to use that betrayal to build something lasting, something that would outlast the hurt I carry. The day came when the board asked for a full review of the unit, a moment to test the integrity of the new plan and the people who ran it. And I watched him squirm at the entrance to the room like a man who suddenly discovers the floor has dropped away. While I sat still and let the data speak, and the charts did not flinch, and the questions landed like precise blows, and the more they dug, the more the truth peeled away in neat, brutal layers until the evidence could no longer be ignored. And when the final decision reached the table, his role was no longer the one he hoped for, but a quiet, distant one, a role that would never place him at the center again. And it did not need a public announcement for the quiet to settle like a mantle across the room. Because the lesson was clear. In this city, there is a price for crossing the line. And I had paid mine with patience, with discipline, with an unbreakable command of the numbers and the truth, and I watched him accept the new